I'm Jean Schumacher, founder of the Plant-Based Academy, where I provide help, support, guidance, and resources to help you switch to a plant-based lifestyle and get your health back, wherever you are on your journey. And today I have the privilege of connecting with Del Sroufe, who is the author of Forks Over Knives, The China Study, Quick and Easy, The China Study Family Cookbook, and Better Than Vegan Cookbooks. He's also the CNS Kitchen Culinary Specialist for the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. You are going to be preparing black bean squash stew, pear and parsnip soup with spicy pear chutney, and I am excited for this. This is going to be amazing. So thank you, Chef Del, for taking the time to be with us here tonight.
Very good. I'm thrilled to be here, Jean. Thank you so much for the invitation, and good to see everybody here this evening. All season here in the Northern Hemisphere, and that means soup weather for us. I want to introduce you to a few unusual ingredients that you may or may not be familiar with. A lot of you guys are cooks, so the ones that I know how to cook, and have probably heard of these. This is a parsnip. It looks like a white carrot, but has a very distinctive flavor. You'll see it more in season here in the autumn season in the States. It's one of my favorite root vegetables because it's got a little bit of an astringent flavor, and I don't mean that in a bad way. If you haven't tried that, add that to your list and see what you think. If you cannot find parsnips, here's some options. You could use carrots, you get a milder flavor. You could use sweet potatoes and get a milder flavor. You could use any root vegetable that you want, and then maybe consider upping the spices a little bit. So we'll talk about that later. And then another ingredient that you may or may not see, and I'll put this in the overhead, is hominy. Hominy is a treated corn. It's been treated with a special texture, but it is corn. It's a whole food product. It comes from Mexico, I believe. You could probably put beans in, some other kind of bean or something else in its place. You could put corn in its place. The corn has a much sweeter flavor than the hominy does, so keep that in mind. But it's not a lot of it. You could leave it out and it'd be okay. And then here in the States, we have smoked chipotle peppers. They're hot with jalapenos. They're smoked, so they give that smoky flavor, but then they're also just have that wonderful, rich flavor that they add to whatever you make them with. Those are a couple of the unusual ingredients we'll have, and let's go ahead and start cooking. So on a medium-high heat, we're going to add our onion. And by the way, these recipes are from a cookbook that I've been working on, and you're going to notice small batches. The cookbook, I can tell you, is called Table for One. It's really designed for people like me who I live and cook just for myself. So I don't really want large batches of food. I can eat the same meal a couple of days, but by day 3, I'm either looking to do something else with it, or let me get that back in the shot, or I'm bored, right? I'm putting it in the freezer. And so I kind of don't want a lot of leftovers in my kitchen. I'm that guy. I was cooking for the family, so I got to do what I want, right? When you get to cook, you can make those decisions. So oil-free kitchen, oil-free pan, dry pan. I've got a little thing of water right here, ready to go. I only add water to this pan. It starts to dry out and starts to brown, something like that. But we want to build flavor. And one of the ways that we do that is by caramelizing our onion. And you can't do that in water. You're just going to boil it, right? So we're going to let that cook and look at it. It's not burning. You can see in the pan there, we're not burning. This is a lot less forgiving than an oil-based cooking. So don't walk away. If you walk away, turn it off and you're okay. What you'll see if you want to cook this way in your own kitchen is there are vegetables like onions and peppers that have a lot of water in them already. So you put them into a dry skillet like this, and they're not going to stick or burn so readily. And we add water when we need to. And then things like our garlic, which does stick, as some of you probably already know, and our spices towards the end of the cooking, and let those cook for a minute to toast those spices and bring out that flavor. That's the basic premise of oil-free saute. Google Chef Del sauteing oil-free, see how it's done. See the pan is starting to brown just a little bit there? That's what you want. That's when we're adding just enough water to get that to do its thing. The onions and the peppers are where we want them. About 5 minutes is all you need, since we're going to cook more with that. All right, so once that's done, we can add our garlic and our spices. We've got I have to look up the quantities. Oh, wait a minute, I have it right here. 3 cloves of garlic, minced. And then we've got 3/4 of a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. Notice the spices I just listed for you. We're not talking about my mama's traditional chili. And there's a reason why. I like chili, but even I get a little tired of it over and over throughout the winter season, right? So I like different kinds of chili. And this is just a different kind of way to season your chili. You'll see like cinnamon is used in the Mediterranean, in North African cooking, and in the Mediterranean here in this part of the world. And the flavors are really wonderful. I mean, they really do a big difference. But now you put your spices in there, and you're only going to toast that for just a minute. All you want to do is toast the spices. It brings out the essential oils in those spices and helps us build on that flavor, right? So once you've done that, we can go ahead and add our tomatoes. Again, 3/4 of a cup. Yep, diced tomatoes. Those are canned. And the tomatoes are going to go ahead and deglaze that pan for us again. Yay. Then we're going to add our black beans. We've got 3 cups.
We have a question, Chef Del. Someone said, I can't do hot or spicy. Do you have suggestions?
Oh yeah, instead of the smoked chipotle pepper, just leave that out. And then you can buy mild chili powder. One is ancho chili powder, but that might have a little bit of tinge to it. But you can buy the traditional American chili powder and be just fine. And maybe just a teaspoon of it, but leave it out and then see what you think of the flavor then, if you even want to add some chili powder. All right, so I've minced up our jalapeno pepper, or our chipotle pepper. It comes whole, very soft, and I think I have it back here to show you. But you just minced it up, and I used half of that. Use more or less to your own taste, and you're good to go. And then we're going to add our hominy. Oh, by the way, our cooked squash. So we roasted the squash ahead of time, just for time's sake. We're going to add a little water to this. And then that's it, right? Once you've roasted that squash, then it comes together pretty quickly. Once you and we do, and if you take one of my cooking courses in C&S Kitchen, there are 2 of them. We do what we call mise en place. We learn that as a cooking technique, which is the organizing all of our ingredients ahead of time, so that when we start cooking, we're not looking for anything. We're not having to stop and start or anything like that. This soup is really sort of giving you a head start on your holiday menu. I think it's a really special soup. It's not one that you might make every day, but it could be a great alternative to your holiday menu. It gives you something with a palate cleansing flavor. We've got half a cup of onion and then the stalk of 1 celery chopped. We're using a heavier pan there, so it's going to take a minute to do its thing. All right, we've got 2 medium pears we're going to use for this. So set your base so you have it on a sturdy base. Then I just slide down around the core like that for a pear. And I'll gnaw on that later. And then you can go through and dice it as you normally would, making sure to have a nice flat surface.
We have a question. What kind of pear do you prefer?
I tell you what, in American grocery stores, unless I'm at the farmer's market, if I go to the farmer's market, I want to ask him what's the most flavorful, ripest pear you've got. I want it ripe. If I'm going to eat it fresh, I might want to get one that's slightly underripe and then go for it. But I like them all. Asian pears are delicious. D'Anjou is probably one that I see the most of, but it depends on how ripe they are. There's your browning. See the browning happening in your stove? A couple tablespoons of water. See the brown as it comes up off the water? That's your flavor. That's caramelization. We want that. My neighbor whom I share my garden with took the fresh thyme, so there is none. So if you use dry instead of fresh, you need about 1/3 as much. So we're just going to go with a pinch of the fresh thyme. And then we're using allspice again. And you're going to love how that enhances the flavor of the other ingredients. It's just delicious. Then we're going to add our parsnips. If you prep ahead of time, you might want to store your parsnips with a little bit of in water with a little bit of lemon juice because they turn very easily. We got a 1/2 pound of parsnips, by the way, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, the recipe called for, 1/2 teaspoon of allspice, and then 3 cups of vegetable broth.
What is allspice?
It tastes a little bit like cloves, a little coriander, a little cinnamon, and so it's therefore its name. Very popular if you've ever had jerk seasoning, but you'll see it in other parts of the world. One of my favorite spices, and especially for beans. The other day, I had a really simple dinner. I had some steamed broccoli. I had some cannellini beans. I cooked those with some onion and garlic, allspice, salt, and pepper, and I was a very happy guy. So it does a lot for just a little. And you can overdo it. Again, it has that kind of astringency to it. So if you use too much of it, you got to be careful with that. But I love it. All right, so that's number 2. We're down. Number 2.
We have a question. Is it okay to cook the pear?
Cook the pear. It doesn't need to cook as long. So we're going to add that in towards the end of the cooking. Good question. So you let this cook. Oh, here's my lid. Let this cook for about 15 minutes. Let this cook for 15 minutes until your parsnips are tender. We'll add the pears and cook for another 5, 6, 7 minutes until they are tender. Then we're going to puree it all. All right. So the last thing up is our spicy pear chutney. And if you don't want the spice, if you're avoiding the heat, leave out the jalapeno pepper. And you could use just a little pinch, maybe a quarter of a green bell pepper, because that pepper flavor is part of that chutney flavor that we want. And then we're going to cook a shallot. We've got 1/2 of a shallot. Again, these are small batches. These recipes easily double. So when you talk about small batch cooking and small batch recipes, it's easier to take a small recipe and then double it than it is to take a larger recipe and have it or cut it into fours. So that's why we're doing this cookbook as a small batch cookbook, table for one. All right, so we're cooking our shallots again. Our aromatics, we're going to cook those first. Let those start to brown and do their thing. So what else have we got? I've got date paste with some cloves. I've got my golden raisins. I've got apple cider vinegar and maple syrup.
So what's the difference between the golden raisins and the dark raisins? What impact will that have?
Dark raisins are going to be made with your red grapes or your purple grape, your dark grape. And they've got a lot stronger flavor. The golden raisins are usually with green grapes and they have a milder flavor. And what you want to look for, what's the name for them? Find them without sulfur added. Mm-hmm. Because the commercial blends, I think they're called sultanas, something like that. They add sulfur to them, and it's not our favorite ingredient. Add a little bit of water here. Do my other pear, and this one you do want to chop a little bit finer because this is how it's going to be, right? It's not going to get pureed or anything. So chop that one a little bit smaller so that it.
Have you ever used a pear slicer or an apple slicer?
No, I'm an old-fashioned guy about those things. All right. So there's our pear's going to go in there. Our raisins, that's 2 tablespoons of our golden raisins. Our 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and maple syrup. And you're using one or the other. You're not using I don't know why I had the date paste out there, but I should have used it. And then 2 whole cloves. And you're going to make sure you take those out before you serve. And then bring that up to a boil.
So how do you find those cloves?
You'll find it, or it'll find you. This shit sticks out. You'll see it if you stir it around a little bit. If I bite into it, it's a breath freshener at the very least, right? Did you
And
know that the entire cilantro, the coriander plant is edible? The stems, the leaves, the roots, and the seed are all edible. They
nice.
all have a mild variation of the same kind of flavor, but each distinctive in and of itself. If you grow your own, I hardly ever grow it because it gets so hot here. It does better in the spring. We'll take that in there.
And if you're one of those people that doesn't like cilantro,
I can't talk to you. Not teasing. You can leave it out. You could add parsley if you wanted to. You know, parsley doesn't have a lot of flavor, but you could add parsley if you wanted to. If you don't like cilantro, but you're okay with coriander, the seed, because they are different, you might try it.
and what kind of knives are you using?
This is my favorite knife, but I had an employee that I let use it when I still had employees. And if you look at the tip of it, it's missing.
Oh,
$150 knife. It's the only, or two expensive knives I've ever bought, and this is one of them. And she stuck it down in the food processor.
oh,
It's still my favorite knife. This is a shun. It sharpens up beautifully. I've never had it commercially sharpened. I've always done it myself, but I've honed it and it keeps its blade so beautifully. So I have that one. And then my other one, which I really bought to help out a young person who was starting off in his career as a knife salesman. He was working for Cutco, and Cutco will come out to your house and sharpen these for you. Wonderful customer service on top of everything. It's an American-made knife, beautifully made. It also holds its blade really well. By the way, you need three knives in your kitchen. You need a paring knife, a little knife like this for fine detail work, and you need a serrated knife for your bread, and then your chef's knife. And if you go to a good cook store, they'll fit you for a knife that feels comfortable in your hand. And that's the most important thing. And they can also talk to you about what you want to look for. So one of those things is you notice the metal in this knife goes all the way back. So from one end to the other. So there's nothing going to come loose here. It is a solid piece of knife, right? So those are your three knives.
are cilantro and culantro the same?
Technically, no. They're two different plants and they vary in flavor. I don't know that they're interchangeable, but you'll see one or the other used. I've never seen both used in a recipe. You guys, I want to tell you, if you're from the CNS Kitchen, Plant-Based Academy is a can also get the education that like, you know, we both offer education and in different kinds of formats. So take a look at plantbasedacademy.net and see what's happening there. And CNS Kitchen is a part of the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, right? We're going to help you figure out the diet. We developed courses like cooking courses. If you're new to cooking, meal planning. We have two courses. People laugh at me, but we'll show you how to boil water in this course. There's that. And then in the meal planning course, if getting difficult seems like a to you, I've developed a course that has 4 different strategies for meal. And one of them is, which is one that you'll see me use in my own kitchen a lot, is just 15-minute meals. It's really fast and easy meals that come together, one-pot meals, and then lots of recipes. The beginner's course has 100 recipes in it. The meal planning course has 60 recipes in it or such. They're online. They're at your own pace. You own them for eternity. There's no time frame for when you have to stop. A lot of support and a lot of patience to help you master that next skill. It's free to join CNS Kitchen. I believe Jean has a free component to hers, and then paid courses, as we all do, to pay the bills and keep the lights on. So supporting those helps us continue the work that we're trying to do and that we love doing. You know, none of us is getting rich doing this. We're here because we love what we do. We love teaching. We love educating people. Jean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were a lifetime teacher, right? Before this?
40, almost 40 years.
I can tell a teacher a mile away. I grew up with teachers in my family. My Aunt Joyce, my Aunt Jackie, both teachers, and you knew when they go into teacher mode. And those of you that have met Charm Ridley over in CNS Kitchen, a teacher for 35, 40 years as well. All right, so this is our chutney is almost good to go there. I'm going to taste this.
And I just want to point out for both programs, for the CNS Kitchen and Plant-Based Academy. Both of those are on the Mighty Network platform. So if you learn one platform, you're going to learn it works the same.
Yeah, it's easy to get from one to the other too. If you join both, you can go to your thing and switch networks really easily. So you can go back and forth. Don't forget where you are, though. That's kind of important, right?
That is true. Very true.
Oh my God. So this is delicious. Let's talk about this chutney for a minute because make a big batch of it, even if you're a small batch cook. And here's why. It's delicious on the soup. But the other day I had some leftover quinoa and I tossed this with that and I had a quinoa salad. Delicious, right? Put it on a burger. If you've got a curry chickpea burger or something, put some of this in some mayonnaise and serve on top of that. And you'll, if you hang out with me long enough, you know that's how my brain's always working about a recipe is how else can I use this? Right now, I want to eat it just by itself because I've not eaten a lot today, but that's okay. So that's ready to go.
If someone's not a pear person, can they switch pear and use apple instead?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the original recipe, I think I used both, but you can easily use just apples with this. Isn't that pretty?
That is gorgeous. Oh,
But to finish that off, to do is take some more cilantro. You could add this in like I'm going to do, or you could serve it. You want to make sure that your parsnips are tender or mostly tender. They are. Awesome. Perfect. Our pears, and add those in. Is anyone tempted to make these soups?
oh, I can't wait for this pear chutney and this soup. Oh my gosh. This looks amazing. And we've had several people going, yep, yep, yep.
That's what I do it for. So I can let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. Talked about the two courses we have that are about 15, 20, 25 hours to start to finish. But you again take your time as much as you need. But I've just gotten permission to do some individual classes, or so I think the first one I'm going to do is a bread bake. I owned a vegan bakery for years, but I've gotten lots of requests for a bread class. I am working with my younger brother I've had my own health problems the past few years, and I'm making really good progress in eating this beautifully near perfect whole food plant-based diet and having a lot of success with it. My brother's got his own health problems. He's a few years younger than I am. And I'm going over to spend 3 weeks with him over the holidays, and I'm cooking all the meals. Yeah, we're going to eat a strictly whole food plant-based diet the entire time I'm there.
Nice.
So I'm very happy about that.
One of the reasons why most people need to come to whole food plant-based is to heal themselves. For those of you who don't know, I am also the historian for the National Health Association, and I've been learning about a lot of the pioneers that actually, started back in the early 1800s. And they almost every one of them had to heal themselves because conventional or allopathic medicine disappointed them and made them worse, actually, on many levels. So learning to eat whole food plant-based has been a journey for many, many people for a long time. We think like, okay, T. Colin Campbell just introduced this. No, this goes back as early as from what I've found, 1822. And even before that, actually, but as a movement, it's pretty impressive.
Archaeologists are showing now that this is the way we've eaten for millennia, that our primary diet was plant-based and meat was augmented because the amount of energy it took to catch meat, and back then they didn't have the storage for meat. They had no way to store it, so they had to eat what they killed, which meant that meat was not an everyday thing. Dr. Campbell has shown us that there are populations in the world, and I heard recently it's not true anymore, and the blue zones are no longer the blue zones because they've adopted the Western diet. And it's sad to hear, but that's what's happening. So I want you guys to take on the challenge with me to become the new blue zone, right? Let's become our own local community blue zones and make that happen. And then not everybody likes a pureed soup. You can puree part of this if you want to. Make sure you like the parsnips by themselves before you do. Taste that and see what you think, because it is a different beast.
How about just doing a little bit, making it almost like, a thicker gravy while you still have some chunkiness to it?
To me, there are no rules in cooking. It's all about experimentation and making it work for you, right? As far as pureeing this, be very careful, you guys, because this can a lot of damage if you're not careful. It's easy to get burned, but what you want to do.
If you use apple in the soup instead of pear, do you need to adjust any of the seasonings?
No, I don't think so. You could always taste. You could always up the spice a little bit, but when you're adjusting spices and adjusting ingredients, do one thing at a time. And it's a bad habit people have of if a little is good, more is better. And that's not always the case. All spices are very strong spice and very astringent, so it can overpower the flavors really easily. And then you liquid to this. If this seems thick, and this kind of does, a little bit more broth or even water to it.
That
That
creamy.
is the beast. That is the deal right there. So let me serve this up and show you what it looks like on the plate, on the bowl.
That just looks so delicious. And I bet with that chutney on top of it,
I know it may not last until the holidays if I'm not careful. Use the big bowl, but we'll do a double serving so it looks good in the bowl. But you do that. Take a little of your chutney on top, and then if you have some fresh cilantro, you could throw that on top too if you like it. And that, my friends, is your pear and parsnip soup with a spicy pear chutney. That's part one.
so your soup is going to have a sweet flavor.
There's a sweetness to both of them because of the spices. They're savory. Now, if you don't use salt, add salt to your food, it might taste sweeter than it might otherwise. And this one really is just thick and hearty, like a soup. It's not very good, not good cilantro. And then that is your squash and black bean stew.
Delicious. Oh my gosh. That looks absolutely amazing. I have the burning question. Where do you get your recipes from? I mean, where do these ideas come from in your head?
My dad and I learned how to cook together after my parents got divorced. And he was an adventuresome cook. I mean, in the early days, it was shake and bake pork chops and a lot of Stouffer's frozen dinners, but he was making he made the best beef stew I've ever had. He learned to use spices and flavors, and he let me in the kitchen to cook. And I come from a family, my grandma Sroufe was considered the best cook in Brown County, a family of really good cooks that let me cook. And so at a certain age, I left business school. I hated being in business school and knew I was not going to use that degree, although I ended up being in business, right? I went to work for a small vegetarian restaurant and they let me cook. They let me experiment. So I pulled up the Moosefoot cookbooks and started playing around with those. By the time I left there 8.5 years later to start my own bakery, I had my own vegan and dessert recipes. I have a whole unhealthy, by the way, vegan dessert recipes waiting for somebody to publish. I stopped the bakery and I started doing a meal delivery service, a personal chef service. And someone gave me a 10-year collection of gourmet magazines. And I would sit and read through them and try different things and try to adopt them to a vegan diet. And that's a lot of where I learned is just by doing it, right? Is trying different flavors. And I love to eat out and try different cuisines. I love ethnic foods from all over the world. And Columbus is a food city, so we have everything from Afghani to Colombian to Jamaican to Indian to Thai. We have it all. So I get to taste all these and then come home and find ways to make them even healthier. So it's just by doing and a lot of practice and exploring recipes. And now my bad habit is I'm watching either Star Talk because I love astronomy at night on YouTube, or I'm watching cooking videos and saying, like the whole new thing of oil-free baking with almond flour to make crusts and things like that is relatively new to me. I've done sugar, but the oil baking is a whole different thing, and I'm sort of learning a few different things from some of the creators out there, and then taking those home, learning from Chef AJ, by the way. She made black bean brownies and her German chocolate cake probably 15 years ago at one of my here in Columbus that I was at at Wellness Forum Health, my business Wellness Forum Foods, and it was the first time I had anything made with black beans that was put into a dessert. So always learning from what other people are doing and then finding ways to make it my own and make it better, and learning how to bring out flavor in all kinds of foods.
And just an FYI, I went to Ohio State.
Yeah, what year? I want to ask. That's a rude question, isn't it? I did too. My dad did too.
I was there from 78 to 85. So
we were there at the same time. I was there 9 to 89. I went off and on for 10 years, but I started in 79.
right?
Wow. We crossed
We never
paths.
And we never met.
Never met. Yeah. Well, a big school, 50,000 back then.
It was more like 80,000 with the satellite ones and stuff. So
Yeah. What was your major?
education. Well,
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I started out for veterinary medicine and realized, it wasn't going to happen. I mean, you needed to sleep with the governor and have a 4.0 average to get into vet school. So it wasn't happening. So I switched over to education and I haven't looked back. And, chemistry, I was an chemistry teacher for years, environmental science. And so I'm very big on the environmental toxins. So here we are.
Wow. Very cool.
Buckeyes. Go
Yeah,
Buckeyes.
Buckeyes. That's right.
I was in the towers, freshman towers.
Oh, I never lived in the towers. I always moved on to the south of campus. And then I don't know if you ever, well, King Avenue wasn't open then. My first restaurant job was there at King and Neal. There was a vegetarian restaurant that opened there in 1986, and I went to work there in 1989.
Chef Del, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight. I mean, honestly, I always learned so much from you. You're just truly, truly amazing. So,
Well, thank you so much. I had fun. In spite of the sound, I had fun. We'll do it again.
let's do it again. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and connect with Chef Del at the Cornell The Kitchen. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Good night.
Bye, everybody.